Following the successful release of the SD70MAC, EMD was looking to improve their AC traction locomotives while also continuing to compete with GE in the horsepower wars, and thus the SD7080MAC was introduced. The 80MAC was brought in with a 20-cylinder prime mover, the first used since the SD45, while also providing 5,000 horsepower. The SD80MAC also had several design differences over the previous models. The radiator section was now flared to incorporate a larger cooling bank, as well as relocation of the dynamic brake housing to the rear of the locomotive that would eventually pass on to the SD90MAC and SD70 Ace. The SD80MAC had limited success with only 30 models ever produced for one customer, Conrail, which after the breakup in 1999, the SD80MAC fleet was split with 12 units going to CSX and 18 units to Norfolk Southern. In 2015, NS bought the remaining SD80MACs back from CSX in a trade agreement. Recently, in February 2020, all 29 remaining units were sold to Canadian Pacific and Progressive Rail, 6 being used primarily for parts, while the remaining 23 units continue for revenue service for PRLX. Athearn announced the SD80MAC at the 2020 Elmhurst Train Show with brand new tooling and a slew of other better-than-brass details, as this model was only previously available in a detailed form through brass manufacturers. Unveiled at the show were 4 paint schemes for the SD80MAC, including the demonstrator scheme and 3 legacy owners, Conrail, CSX, and Norfolk Southern. A total of 13 road numbers were produced for an MSRP of $339.98 for DCC and Sound models. Today we have the Conrail paint scheme with the CSX patchwork over the Conrail. CSX acquired these units and kept them in the Conrail paint scheme for many years before the last ones were repainted into the CSX YN3 Dark Future paint scheme in the latest of 2009. Starting off with the front of the locomotive, there's a bunch of details heading the locomotive. The first detail to point out is not very obvious, but is the removable cab roof to allow access to the cab interior to make modifications or install cab figures. Up on the cab roof, there's a good number of separately applied metal grab irons painted in blue and white to match the overall paint scheme. The LED headlight and backlit number boards are also mounted above the cab windows and glow in the warm white color. One of the interesting aspects about these EMD cab windows is that the SD80MAC has 6 etched metal windshield wipers instead of the usual 4 per locomotive. Up on the nose of the locomotive, there's more of the drop-style metal grab irons as well as separately applied sandfill hatches. Down the front of the nose is more of the metal grab iron ladders as well as the LED marker lights in the upper corners. The SD80MAC also sports a right-sided nose door with a plastic window insert. The front handrails are molded in a blue plastic and have white painted areas in the prototypical spots. Below the anti-climber is the pilot-mounted LED ditch lights in the warm white color matching the headlights and number boards. Some other plastic separately applied details are the coupler cut bar with white accent paint, the MU cables, and associated receptacles. The rubber airlines is also a brand new Athearn feature with the silver painted glad hands matching the plastic 3-piece sets. The snowplow is also very nicely done with separately applied metal grab irons. And finally, the McHenry plastic coupler with magnetic trip pin is on the absolute front of the locomotive. Continuing down the conductor's side of the cab, there's more standard Athearn details. The conductor's window has a single set of side mirrors compared to the engineer's dual sets, and the windows are tinted a nice color to reduce sun glare. The main feature of this area is the CSX patch over the previous Conrail's reporting marks, with the new yellow CSX 808 being prominently displayed. Towards the front of the locomotive, the separately applied plastic handrails next to the side steps can be seen. The trucks and associated brake plumbing are modeled in a black color, wire airlines separately applied. This viewing angle also gives a good opportunity to check out the see-through etched metal side steps, and on the second from bottom step, the non-operational side step light housing detail can be seen. The conductor's side of the long hood has a lot more interesting details and different associated details with several additional electrical boxes and other associated compartments just behind the cab. There's also several metal grab irons as well as a see-through bridge over the different boxes. The side walkway has Clecon plastic handrails running down the length of the long hood. Beneath the sill of the locomotive, there are several other applied details to point out, like the LED ground lightings that illuminate both sides of the front truck. The standing lines are also separately applied pieces and surround the first and third axles of each associated truck side. Finally, the fuel tank with the associated fuel gauges, fuel filler ports, and breather pipes can be seen below the sill. The rear side of the locomotive looks more like an abstract piece of art with several jagged edges and square outlines. At the top of all this is the high-mounted LED rear light between the LED illuminated number boards and just above the LED red marker lights just below. The large square portion that jets out into the walkway is the rear sandfill reservoir with associated sandfill hatch and metal grab irons on the sides. Similar to the front of the locomotive, there's a good amount of separately applied details below the anti-climber on the rear of the locomotive. The rear boasts MU cables with receptacles, rubber airlines, non-operational spare knuckle couplers, and finally the plastic McHenry coupler. On the engineer's side of the locomotive, the main spotting feature is the lack of extra electrical boxes immediately behind the cab that is significantly more plain. For the Conrail units and units that went to CSX, one of the road-specific details is the 4-panel dynamic brake louver on the rear of the locomotive. The majority of these were converted to one-piece louvers once back at NS. The distinct flared radiator section also dominates the model's outline in the rear sections. Similar to other locomotives, the engineer's side has dual air tanks just above the fuel tank as well as the bell. Other details to spot are the fuel tank details similar to the conductor's side, like the fuel gauges, fill ports, and emergency shutoff. The top of the locomotive has good details as well, with several cab details like the Conrail specific antenna, and this specific CSX unit has the repainted white roof instead of the Conrail blue. Throughout the entire sill of the locomotive sports the WALKWAY treading. Up on top of the locomotive, the separately applied metal lift rings are applied to the long hood. The Nathan K5LA horn, denoted by the 5-horn arrangement, is painted in white to match the prototype, and the radiator section has a separately applied plastic fan detail under the grills. The locomotive does come installed with the Genesis Driveline, a 5-pole skew-wound motor with dual flywheels, and an all-wheel drive and electrical pickup for smooth operation. The DCC and sound version does come with Tsunami 2 by Soundtrax and can operate on DCC or DC layouts. The model comes in at just under 23.5 ounces or 664 grams and was able to register a drawbar pull of 4.4 ounces averaged over 3 test pulls. Modelers can expect to pull approximately 50 to 60 cars with a single locomotive on a level grade. Now that we've gotten a chance to take a pretty good look at the details, we're going to go ahead and turn on the track power and check out the lights and sounds of this SD80MAC. The last portion of the review is going to be the scoring section, so I'm going to go ahead and throw up the rubric with the different categories and their respective maximum possible points. Up first is the packaging, standard Genesis packaging. I did notice they started to add truck stabilizers, which is a nice upgrade from previous model boxes. Their accuracy of the locomotive also looks pretty good, a lot of road and model specific details. Looking through older photos, the CSX patchwork was seen from October 2001 to October 2003, so it's most accurate for that 2-year stretch, but other CSX patch units last until about 2009. There are a few errors that I did notice off the prototype photos, but I'm not sure if it's actually road-specific road numbers or if it was just small attention to detail issues, but either way, there was a few issues, so I'm going to take away 1 point. The paint was actually better than what I expected. Whenever white paint is coated over a bolder paint like a blue, the fading is usually an issue, but Athearn executed it well on this model, and all the decals and painting look great. Detail-wise, this is a brand new offering from Athearn, so the expectations are generally pretty high, especially with the advances in details recently. Generally, the details are really good, and this model is very nice, but there are a few details found on other models that the SD80MAC is missing, like roller bearing caps and the utilization of real change, so I'm going to give it a 23 out of 25. The motor and electronics are very similar to the details, where the bar is set pretty high, especially with a brand new locomotive. Once again, the locomotive falls just a little bit flat, with overall a good showing from the motor, but the lack of a capacitor bank is disappointing. The lights are alright. My model came out of the box a little bit dim, but not overpowering. Other modelers have had issues with that being extremely dim, but a few CV changes can adjust them to the owner's liking, so I'm going to give it a 23 out of 25. Couplers, trucks, and wheels are probably the single most disappointing feature from Athearn as of recently. Generally, the plastic couplers have been a disappointing feature for several years, while metal couplers are the standard on almost any other manufacturer. Luckily, the couplers are at the correct height, wheels are all engaged, and trucks look good, so only an 8 out of 10 though. Value-wise, the locomotive is pretty good. I really enjoy how Athearn is keeping price increases relatively low while slowly adding more features and maintaining the tried and true aspects as well, so I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. Miscellaneous, there's not much to add to here. The SD80MAC is very similar to the SD90MAC if you purchase that and other Athearn releases, and to me falls a little bit flat from other manufacturers, especially on brand new releases. Adding up all the points, that comes out to a 92 out of 100, which would be about an A- in the schooling system, and that seems pretty fitting for me. The general vibe I get from the locomotive is that it's a brand new release with the expectations of the best from Athearn, but just falls a little bit short. Definitely seen a lot of improvement from other Athearn releases here and there in the last few years, and the SD80MAC is another staple in that line. In the end, this is a very nicely detailed model from Athearn Genesis with a lot of great details, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone who is modeling the East Coast in the 90s or later. You really got to give a hand to Athearn for going out and providing modelers with a brand new locomotive when there's only a few real-world examples, and that's really going above and beyond and providing the customers with a great product. So that's all I got for you guys right now. Just want to say I appreciate all the feedback and views, and I want to continue to hear from the viewers on improvements, recommendations, or anything else you guys want to see. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close out the video with a few run-by shots, and we'll see you next time. So thanks for watching.